And welcome to the Aaron Katzman Show. I'm your host, Aaron Katzman, where we speak about your life, your money, and your investments. And as always, we're coming to you from the spiritual and soon-to-be financial capital of the world, Jerusalem, Israel. If you like this content, please hit the like button below. And if you've not yet done so, please subscribe to both the YouTube channel and the big podcast. So we are continuing, due to popular demand, we're continuing on the series we've been doing on Israeli entrepreneurship, Olim who have made the big plunge, taken the big plunge and started their own business. And today, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Zia Jaffe-Rose, who came to Israel 33 years ago. She has a really interesting story. She worked at the phone company Bezeq for a long time, and then bought the legendary bookstore Sefer Sefel in Jerusalem. So it's my honor to introduce Zia to the show.
Hi. It's fun to be here. This is exciting.
Okay, well, it's good. Okay, so let's jump right in. You have a really interesting story. You came to Israel 33 years ago.
Right, that's what I tell everybody. I came here on a 6-month ticket in June 1989, and single, as not so many people do. And I went back in December, and my mom was saying, like, okay, you're back now. And I said, well, I'm kind of back to pack my winter clothes to go back. And then it was really until spring 1991, I had a job interview at Bezeq that I met through the Rehavia network, a Friday night dinner, like the single scene, and somebody saying I work in the economics department at Bezeq. And I said, oh, I have a degree in economics. He set up an interview. I got the job. I'm filling out the paperwork. And they say, what's your Teudat Zehut? And I said, I don't have one. Like, I'm not a citizen. So they ripped up the papers. They said, go make Aliyah. And when you have a Teudat Zehut, come here and fill out the paperwork. So my Aliyah was most unceremonious. I sat in Misrad Pnim. I filled out my paperwork and said, welcome to Israel. And like, that was it. And there I was. And I stayed at Bezeq for 16 years.
There's nobody waiting for you at the airport with balloons and a band and a marching band.
Not even close. Not even close. I had no idea about rights or, the whole thing. Like all of a sudden I had this semi-government job with all sorts of tanaim, a paycheck that until this very day, if I looked at it, I couldn't even describe to it. But it was, I threw myself into the deep end. I was completely humiliated over my Hebrew. So I really had to break my teeth on that. And the reason they hired me, and I'm just going to show how old I am to everyone, is I knew how to write formulas in Lotus 1, 2, 3. And exactly, like, wow, you're old. So
the younger viewers are going to hear the Lotus and they're going to think it's like a cookie or something like that, right? There's
right.
Ice cream Lotus.
It's when I first started working at Bezeq in 1991, the computer room was the size of a university, and only the vice president had a personal computer.
So let's fast forward.
I'm hiding much gray hair underneath this.
Let's fast forward. So you worked at Bezeq, yes. You had a couple other positions, and then you decided to buy a business. Like, what was the thought process? Why did you do it? How did you do it? Right? How did you make the switch from what people would probably define as the ultimate 9-to-5 job?
The ultimate, well, yeah, it's
right,
ultimate
working at the
I have the foot of waking up every morning and love what I do, and not
right.
I have a lot of satisfaction.
Working from a government job, basically, for all intents and purposes, from the phone company, right, to owning your own business. Tell us about like how that all came to be and the story.
So there's a middle step. So I was at Bezeq for 16 years. It was wonderful to be in a position where I had maternity leave and car insurance. And it was, it was a fantastic orientation into Israeli culture and fitting in and speaking Hebrew and learning ropes. And it was a fantastic experience. And it was most helpful because I got married and had 4 children while I was at Bezeq. And it was great to have that kind of like fixed salary coming in and the benefits of working for a big company. But at some point, Bezeq privatization and mobile phones, things were falling apart for Bezeq a little bit. My kids were still very little, and they said, if you want to keep your job, you're going to have to commute to Tel Aviv. So I pursued other opportunities, and then I was accepted into a position as administrative director of the Dresher Rachel B'Chaya, which is part of Sefel, the women's school, which I will confess, at the time it was my dream job to work for a Jewish organization, to work for an amutah, and to be involved with people so much, and it was wonderful. I was there for about 8 or 9 years. It was fantastic. And then my husband, who was also working in a bookstore, worked in another bookstore, then opened up his own bookstore, Judaica Book Center, just because he felt he had a calling, that he just said, like, I can do this on my own. So he opened up a small store. The light rail business put him out of business. And then, but he was selling books. He had a long time relationship with the previous owner of Sefer Sefel, Uri Ruham, who a lot of people know because he was there for 30 years. And I described the experience as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Michael had been part of selling Judaica, like Jewish books, to Uri for 20 years. And Uri decided it's time for him to retire. And he invited 4 people, like 4 people got a golden ticket to put in bids for the business. And I really feel that we did not give the highest bid, but I really feel that, like, my husband was Charlie. He was like the right person, and Uri really wanted him to have the business. And so Michael came home and told me about this, and he just said, I'm not going to do it unless you're the front man. Like, you need to be the person in the bookstore. I'm not a tremendous reader, but we have a love of books in our house. Anyone who would see our house would know that books are a big part of our lives here. But the idea of owning a business after working for a government company for 16 years, working for a nonprofit for 8 or 9 years, I felt the trade-off of the steady salary and the fixed income of being our own bosses in a Jerusalem business was so exciting. It was so, and to this day, we've had the store for 7 years now, and we've been through COVID, and it is not easy, and there are many challenges, and I can smile through it right now, but lo pashut, it's not an easy thing. But the satisfaction of being business owners in Jerusalem is just kind of like, for me, it's like part of my Aliyah, win, big win.
So when you were growing up, did you have like the entrepreneurial urge? Did you always have like a, something in the back of your mind saying, I want to own my own business? Or is it something sort of felt that you fell into?
I always knew, because I grew up in a house where, with a lot of self-confidence, that I can, basically, I can do anything. I can do anything I want. I can just do anything. Zia, you can do anything you want. You do anything you want. And I got stuck in, I had my 1-year program. I went to a good school, and I graduated Barnard. I had this degree in economics. I feel like I'm top of the world. And then you're sitting there in Manhattan going, this, it's very stereotypical. Like, you're waiting, you're in the dating scene, in the single scene, and you're like, wait a minute, something like it just isn't good enough. It just isn't good enough. So it takes a real amount of bravery and chutzpah to say, I'm going to forge out and I'm going to do it on my own. But it never occurred to me that it was like too hard. It's just, you kind of go where the flow is and make the most of it. And I never really lacked the confidence to say, even just getting the job at Bezeq in the economics department. I knew my Hebrew, even though I went to yeshiva day school and yeshiva high school, and I spent a year in Israel, my conversation with Hebrew was terrible. But you just push forward, saying, this is where I'm going to go, then I'm going to go with it 100%. You got to go, you just got to go whole hog on it, and just say, why not? Why can't I do this? Of course I can do this.
And do you find that owning a business in, let's say, a foreign land with a foreign language, has been more of a challenge, let's say, than you would have had you opened up a business in New York?
I think we all I think a lot of us believe that it's so much harder in Israel. I think we can, because look, I got married here, I had my kids here, I established myself here as an adult. But I can't imagine it would be so much easier. Oh, it's easy in America, negotiating banks, negotiating tradesmen, like electricians and other logistical issues of setting up an office. Like even if you set up your own beautician's office in your house, you need certain equipment, you need certain professionals to help you. Like I don't like, maybe I'm naive, but I can't imagine it wouldn't be challenging anywhere you're going to set it up. Like I didn't see Israel as a more particular challenge. I'm always aware of the fact that people hear my accent, and even though my Hebrew is quite fluent, they all American, they know but I'm very confident, but I forge ahead, and sometimes even Israelis are going to get taken advantage of in business sometimes. You just have to be aware of what you're doing. But I don't find being in Israel any more challenging than these days than earning a parnasa in, trying to earn a living anywhere right now. It's challenging everywhere. It's just a different set of challenging.
So you're the owner of a bookstore in a world where I would assume reading books isn't as popular as it was before the technological revolution that we're in the midst of for the last 25 years, right? How is it
business has changed,
right? So business has changed. That's fascinating, right? So explain how business has changed and how you have changed, if you've changed, to sort of keep up with the changes.
So I just want to make a note before I go into that, is that Corona hurt us more than electronic books.
Okay.
Electronic books did not, like Kindles didn't put books out of business. I'm very happy to say. I do believe that being in Jerusalem is a particular advantage because there is a high percentage of Orthodox Jews who are Shabbos, who are observant Jews, and they might be reading a book. They might even be reading a book on their Kindle, but they're still going to want to read it on Shabbat. Or there's people who just read, the only time they read is on Shabbat. So that is certainly part of a niche. There's also the advantage of the one-year program kids and a Dati population that aren't on their phones all the time and aren't on internet all the time. So they're still reading books. And while we do consider ourselves dinosaurs, I mean, talk about low tech, incredibly low tech, we're very likable low tech. And it's become Sefer Sefel. Anyone who knows the store, it's a very interactive experience. It's not a shop. It's something to do. You don't come there and say, I'm looking for this book. You walk in there and you see what people have put in. You talk to other people in the store. You sometimes, like what I always say, if you're looking around, the best way to shop at Sefer Sefel is to let the book find you, and not for you to look for a specific book. You're walking around, you see all the different genres, the different categories. You say, oh, that looks interesting. And then all of a sudden, you've got 4 books. So it is something, it's a very old school activity. It's not just a shop.
So let's go back, right? This was going to be one of the main questions. How did you survive or weather the Corona storm?
So bottom line is our other business, Judaica Book Center, Michael's business. Michael successfully pivoted to an online business that the one-year programs and online bar mitzvah registries and gift certificates, and people who couldn't come to smachot in Israel would buy gifts through him, and he would deliver them in the country. So he really helped us. He really schlepped us through. I did a lot of personal shopping for people. I WhatsApp videoed with people. We'd go up and down the aisles. They'd pick out books. I brought home boxes of books to Beit Shemesh so people could shop. I did some videos on book reviews, and people would ask, we mailed books to, we did a huge package. We sent a box of books to Beersheba Medical School. A bunch of the Anglo medical students called up with a list of like 150 books. I had about 70 of them, and like, you know, we sent it. We got creative and we worked hard.
The life of an entrepreneur, right, is to be resourceful.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Somebody's, you know, a lot of people ask me, right? They ask me for advice. Should we open a business? Shouldn't we open our own business? What kind of tips do you give to people who are thinking, or tips that you can share from your own experience that might help people get a better understanding of what it is to have a business in Israel?
Okay. Well, the first thing I'll say is, as the parent of 20-somethings, we're learning that the job market, business, the world is so very different than when we were in our 20s. So, you know, we want our kids to ask advice from us, but like we feel kind of like out of like we've taken the role of being very supportive, you know, rather than saying, I think you should do this. You know, long are the days when, like, you know, the mom will say, be a doctor, be a lawyer, like, you know, like you just think, find your happy, find what you know, figure out what you want to do, which is no small feat. That I'm saying it, that's one sentence, but it's huge. Find what you want to do and forge ahead. And a lot of people come here, and I live in Beit Shemesh. I'm the first one to admit it. And my customer base right now in my life is mostly English, you know, mostly English speakers, but I do have a lot of Israelis that read in English. So I feel that I can say this without, like, you know, talking down to anybody. Learn Hebrew. You need to learn Hebrew. Even though you're opening up, you want to open up your own business in your house in Efrat or in Modi'in, or, you know, with a big Anglo neighborhood. And you're probably only going to have customers that like are going to pay you by their US credit cards. It doesn't matter. You come on Aliyah, figure out the banks, figure out the phone companies, figure out, like, you know, like you just be part of what's happening here in Israel. Don't live in your bubble here, because it's, you know, it's complicated. It is complicated. So I think learning Hebrew, no matter what you're doing, go to Ulpan or speak Hebrew in the house, and like embrace the whole thing. Like, to live in Israel. That's, I think, speaking Hebrew, I think, is essential.
And would you tell people who are contemplating starting their own businesses to go for it? Or, you know, what would you, somebody comes to you, say, you know, I've got this great idea, I want to start a business, my own business. Would you tell them to take the plunge? Would you tell them to be more deliberate? Like, what would your advice be to them based on your experience?
I'm assuming that they've done their due diligence and research, you know, about the market, about, like, say there's, like, you know, there's a niche or there's a product, and assuming that they just didn't have this, like, you know, like off the top of my head, like, you know, let's serve triangle hamburgers. That's a great idea, you know, unless they've come up with something that they've done their research, they've spoken to people, they've done their due diligence, then you have to go for it, because the world is changing so rapidly now, and not everyone can be in high tech. We need to do other things, you know. But you know, thank God there are still people studying to be doctors and lawyers and dentists and midwives and you know, and plumbers, you know. But if I would definitely encourage it, but soberly, you know. But I would only encourage it because if that's what they want to do, if it doesn't work, like, it didn't work. But you're never going to know unless you tried. And like, my husband has made a living you know, like, if somebody would ask me, like, how we've paid for everything, how we've afforded, and how we've lived, like the last, like, 35 years of our lives, I have no answer. Like, God is good, like, thank God. But my husband only ever wanted to sell books, and he either worked for a bookstore or he went out on his own. He works really hard. He's determined that this is what he does because this is who he is, and he does it. And you know, don't be afraid of hard work. But if that's what you want, then go for it. Go for it.
And it's rewarding at the end of the day, right?
It's rewarding. It's exhausting, and it's tired, and you don't see your friends as often as you'd like to, and you can't make it to that Pilates class every week that you want to go to. But like I said, for me personally, it's, you know, and for Michael, we feel extremely fulfilled. There are many times when we feel very fulfilled, like, look what we've done. We came
Oh,
here as children, we've raised a family, we have this business, we have a business in Jerusalem. Like, is that just not the coolest thing or what?
right.
So there's tremendous, like that is just like, that is like so cool. Like, you know, like, wow, look what we have. For as long as we have it and for as long as it goes, if we have to reinvent ourselves again sometime, then we'll do it. But for now, we are business owners in Israel, and like, yay us,
Right.
yay us, and join the club. You
I
know?
love that. I love that.
Yeah.
That's my feeling. Like that whatever happens with the business, the fact that I have a business in not just a foreign country and a foreign culture, business culture and the whole thing, but that it's in Israel
Gosh,
and
yes.
it's in Jerusalem
Yeah.
is just I sometimes actually stop and think about it. I try not to just let it go.
Exactly.
And we
Yeah.
were a few days ago, some of my family, I'm in my office is in the center of town, center of Jerusalem, not far from
Mhm.
your store.
Yeah.
And some of my family was in town and we needed a bathroom break. So we came up to my office and the office was closed. We came up to the office and my wife turned to me and she goes, I can't believe you have an office.
Yeah.
You have an
Yeah.
office
You
in
have
the
a
middle
presence
of
in it.
Jerusalem, right? Like
Right.
it's so bizarre, but like thank God, it's incredible. It's a great feeling. And like you said, there's a lot of stress and a lot, you know, in certain respects, a 9 to 5 job and the guaranteed paycheck are great. But at the end of the day, there's nothing like owning your own business.
I can't even compare. And I can compare because I did have that job for 16 years. And which thank God I do, because like that's it was a very nice pension package and all these kind of things. But it was the 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 satisfaction at the end of the day outweighs everything. There's still this little girl. When I came to Israel for the first time, I was 6 years old and I went to the hotel and I said Shema Yisrael, like that little girl is like looking like, you know, looking at me going like, you know, like, wow, you know, like, how the heck? But like, you know, go figure. You know, I mean, I came to Israel single. People said to me, like, you know, my husband's English. You know, how do you have an English husband? I said, we met here in Israel. You know,
Uh-huh.
we met on Kibbutz Alumim. We just like you have to be pretty flexible and open-minded and just like just grab hold of things. Life is here. You know, life is here. Don't like, you know, get off your phone, shut off Netflix for a couple of hours and go outside. So you know, it's
How can people get in touch with you?
so I have a Facebook page, Sefer Sefel. I'm on Instagram. We're at the store from 9:30 in the morning till 6:30 in the evening. It's I give everybody my WhatsApp number if they want to like ask about books or talk about books. And we're pretty nice people. We're friendly. So like, you know, we're pretty approachable at the end of the day.
And we'll put all that information I'll put in the notes of the show so people can just watch it and then click on it and get to your Facebook account or your Instagram, whatever, and they'll have access to that and get in touch.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. We said for old people, we're pretty like, you know, we're pretty into social media. You know, like I just put up blurbs of books. I make music references from the 70s or the 80s, and whoever gets it gets it. You know, like I'm having fun. Like, you know, I always tell people like it's my occupational therapy. I'm having more fun. If it doesn't sell a book, I don't care. I had a great time. So that's what works for us.
Great. This was great. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate
Oh,
it.
it's fantastic. This was great. Thank you so much for having me.
You've been tuning into the Aaron Katzman Show. We speak about your life, your money, and your investments. And as always, if you liked this, please, please, please hit the like button below. And if you've also not yet done so, please subscribe to both the YouTube channel and the podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll speak to you soon.